Hi, my name is Matt Stohrer and I repair saxophones for a living. And today I would like to talk to you about saxophone tone holes. It's going to be a two-part video series where first I tell you what tone holes are, what they do, how they do it, and the different types of tone holes and the benefits and drawbacks of each. The second part of the video series, I'm going to actually level a tone hole so you can see how that's done and you can be better informed next time you get your saxophone worked on as to whether that's something you would like included in the work, and if so, what you can expect that should be done. So what is a tone hole? A tone hole is a hole in the body of the saxophone where tone comes out of. The way a saxophone works, basically you close pads and you close these holes in the body and you make the saxophone longer, which makes the pitch drop. So the longer the saxophone is, the lower the pitch is. And then you overblow octaves and it gets a little more complicated. But basically, that's how it works. The longer the saxophone is, the lower the pitch goes. And there needs to be an airtight seal on these tone holes. And the way that is achieved is by using pads, which are a leather covering over a felt interior, the cardboard backing. There's lots of different types of skin. They can be treated, not treated. It can be goat, it can be sheep, it can be calf, it can be kangaroo, it can be synthetic. Basically, lots of different types will work. They can be either very firm or very soft. And the way that is achieved is by the interior of the pad. You can see there's the leather there. And then the sandwich part in between is felt. And that's usually woven, sometimes can be pressed. And the hardness of that felt and the thickness of that felt is what is modified the most. I tend to use a nice firm pad because I do professional work with very high tolerances. A lot of times student work will be done on a much softer pad because it's much more forgiving. It's easier to do work quickly and have it be decently done, so you can do it for less, which a lot of times on student instruments, especially if it's owned by a school, the repairman isn't given a lot of time or a large budget to work on the instrument, so it's very important to turn around quickly. So they use a very soft pad. I use a very hard pad, nice and firm, which gives it a great feel under the fingers, but it's a little bit more difficult to work with. The tone holes have to be nice and level, and it just takes a little bit more time. So tone holes are made two basic ways. They can be either a part of the body, or they can be a separate part that is attached. A drawn tone hole is one that is a part of the body. So this brass here is a part of the saxophone body, and what they do is they cut an oval into the body, an oval because this side of the tone hole is higher than this side of this tone hole. So they cut an oval and pull it out. And the way they do that is they punch all the holes, or they mill all the holes into the saxophone body, and then they slide the saxophone body, once it has all the holes punched in it, onto a mandrel, which is a steel cone the shape of the inside of the saxophone, and it has pockets machined out inside of it where balls or egg-shaped balls sit that are the exact size of the inside of each of these tone holes. So they slide it on, and then they put a sleeve over top that is the interior of which is the exact size of the outside of the tone hole, and then they pull the ball out, and it presses this metal against the inside of that sleeve, and you formed a tone hole. And then they machine this down to get this flat. The other way that you can have tone holes made is by having them attached to the body, and they can attach them with either a low melt temperature solder or a high melt temperature solder. The former is usually called soft soldering, and you get tone holes like on this old Kyleworth. Kyleworths actually almost always have drawn tone holes, but they made a couple hundred with soldered tone holes. So these tone holes are a separate machined piece of metal that has been attached to this body with a low melt temperature solder, aka soft solder. The other way it can be done is similar piece of material, brazed, hard soldered, silver soldered, basically a very high melt temperature solder, like on King instruments. Now, the drawback with soft solder is that over time it can break down, and I can actually show you that on a very old Bisher C soprano. This has been soft soldered, and over time it starts to break down. You can see this actually has the original pads in it. It has not been used very much, but and you can actually even see it here, that the solder on this tone hole has started to crack because it's just breaking down over time. Now, on the one hand, it's fairly easy to fix because it doesn't require a super high melt temperature, but it is going to take time, which means that I'm going to be charging more to do this job than I would if those tone holes did not have cracks in them. And also, these leaks can be very difficult to find. And that's what it is, really, is a leak. If you've got a crack in the solder, then you've got a leak in your tone hole, which is obviously not good. So that can happen with soft soldered tone holes. It is found on Martins sometimes because of the way because of the solder they use. Just seems fairly common. And it's difficult to track down and rather expensive to fix. But the plus side of soldered tone holes is that you can have a nice thick wall of your tone hole. So you've got more surface area for your pad to sit on, which is going to make it easier to do good pad work that feels really nice under the fingers, and should last a lot longer because your pads will not be broken down as quickly because the force will be spread out over a larger area. Now, if you've got silver soldered tone holes, of which I do not have an example right now, but if you've got silver soldered tone holes, you don't really have the problems with the solder breaking down over time. So you've got the benefits of the soldered tone holes without too many of the drawbacks, really any of the drawbacks. And that is usually found on king instruments such as the Zephyr and the Super 20. Now, drawn tone holes can actually be done a couple different ways. These are regular, straight, drawn tone holes on a Selmer balanced action. You can see the surface area is a little bit less than on the soldered tone holes. Now, in an attempt to get the best of both worlds, sometimes tone holes are drawn out of the body and then rolled. So this roll here on the lip of this tone hole is actually a portion of the brass that was drawn out of the body and then rolled over, which gives you a nice rounded surface area that is very friendly to the pad, and pad work can last an awful long time on rolled tone holes. The only downside is that it is not possible to level these tone holes through abrasive means because you would be destroying the roll and you could possibly even go through it. So a lot of times you'll see on these old instruments that have rolled tone holes, well, even the modern too, you'll see that the tone holes are unlevel and there's not a whole lot of ways to fix it. So I'm going to demonstrate what I'm talking about here. I put a light inside the body. I've got a flat piece of metal. I'm going to hold it against the tone hole and show you guys. See how unlevel that is. So on one end, it's actually a little bit easier to do the pad work on a rolled tone hole because of the surface area of the tone hole, but when they're unlevel, it can be much more difficult. And you can see this one is pretty unlevel, and this body has not been damaged. This is just the way these tone holes came from the factory. This is an old 1920s Con. And of the instrument makers that made rolled tone holes, you've got Con, SML, Kyleworth. A lot of modern Taiwanese saxophones have rolled tone holes, and they're pretty much all like this. Con did it really well in the 30s, but you're still going to find unlevel tone holes on rolled tone holes. So that's the drawback of rolled tone holes. Also, if they get damaged, they can be very difficult to fix. If it takes a very sharp blow, it can be more difficult to fix than a drawn or soldered tone hole if damaged in the same way. So that is tone holes. You've got drawn tone holes, which are a part of the body, and they can be rolled or not. You've got soldered tone holes, which are a separate piece of metal that is attached to the body of the instrument, and that can be attached either with soft solder or silver solder. But the basic job carried out by these tone holes remains the same. You need to have a surface for your pad to sit on and seal pneumatically, that is, seal airtight. And in the next video, I'm going to show you what the difference is between an unlevel tone hole and a level tone hole, and how unlevel tone holes can be made level. My name is Matt Stohrer. I repair saxophones for a living. I hope this was helpful, useful, informative, and thanks for watching.